Okay, here we go, guys. We're going to talk about determining prices today, and specifically how do we get to a equilibrium when we start merging together the ideas of demand and supply. So this idea of equilibrium comes down to the market equilibrium point. And what economists are trying to figure out here is at what point are consumers willing to take out of the marketplace the exact quantity that suppliers are willing to produce. That is called our market equilibrium price. So you make the exact number of donuts that you want to make at a given price on that day, then the people who are coming by your store demanding that same number of donuts is exactly equal. You have no donuts left over in your case at the end of the day, and you have no customers lined up outside of your donut shop waiting to buy donuts that day. That is a perfect world. Rarely does that ever happen in real life unless you have done the marketing or the research and you have figured all of this out to an exact science. But economics is not necessarily an exact science, especially when applied in the real world. But we do want to be able to figure out how do we get to that market equilibrium price. And that is the agreed upon price at which both the buyers and the sellers are going to be happy as they walk away from a deal. So when we see that here on our graph shown up on the screen there, when we're looking at candy bars, the market equilibrium price is 70 cents. As a seller at 70 cents, I'm willing to make and sell 3,500 candy bars. On the buyer side of things, you look at the demand curve, the red one there, at 70 cents per candy bar, I have 3,500 people who are willing to buy a candy bar at 70 cents. So we agree upon that, and there's going to be a perfect market equilibrium point right there. But that doesn't always happen. So let's just say that I decide that I'm going to raise my prices because as a seller, if I look at the law of supply, the more you are willing to pay, or the higher the price of an item, the more I'm willing to make, because I want to make more money. So I'm going to look at my candy bars and I want to raise the price so I can make a higher profit. So when I raise that above the market equilibrium point, what it's going to do is result in an excess of unsold product. So again, we come back to our candy bar illustration here, and I was not content with selling 3,500 candy bars at 70 cents a piece. Instead, what happens is I raise my price up that supply curve up to $1.25. Well, you notice what happens here to $1.25. I now am willing to make 4,750 candy bars for $1.25. But if you look at the demand curve, and again, all else being equal, okay, we've got to keep that in mind. Nothing has shifted at this point. No change in supply, no change in demand. We have changed the quantity demanded because we've changed the price. And I think that's really important for you to keep in mind here. So the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied have changed because of the change in price. So we look at the quantity demanded. At $1.25 here, we have only 2,250 customers lined up at my chocolate shop to buy candy bars today. And that's going to result in unsold product, unsold candy bars sitting in my candy store waiting to be sold, and I have no customers left. And so we have a surplus. I like to look at these graphs here in this format. If we are to look at the supply and demand curve above the market equilibrium point, we have almost a cone shape there that is going to hold all of our extra product inside of it. If we were to start dumping those candy bars inside, we could see their excess, their leftover. So you know that any point that's above market equilibrium will result in a surplus and extra left over. That's not a good thing. You really don't want that. And those of you that were in class got to see this video. Those of you that are watching this online, you can look it up. This video is describing the event right after last year's Super Bowl, or the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Falcons. Falcons had a 26-3 lead at halftime. So Dick's Sporting Goods started putting out all this championship gear. And of course, you know, second half, here come the Patriots, and the Super Bowl champion t-shirts, hats, all had to be removed out of the store shelves at Dick's Sporting Goods. A couple of cameras caught this, and they had to take those away. So we had unsold product that was left over. There was a huge surplus in Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl championship gear that nobody's willing to buy. So what do you do with all that left over? There are a number of costs involved in that. I used to use this as illustration until the Atlanta Falcons stole away a better illustration back a few years ago. The New England Patriots were on their way to a perfect season, so Championship t-shirts, once again, were put together. Perfect season, 19-0, that never happened. So there was all this surplus left over, and there was some cost involved in that. Of course, you automatically think about the cost that was wasted by producing all that material, but there's other costs involved. They're not going to show up on the screen, but things that you should consider when you have that extra surplus. First of all, you've got storage of all those extra items. You have to find a place to box them up, put them on a shelf, or to ship them away, or to do something with them. You've got costs involved there that's going to take away from your profits. You also have cost of securing that excess product. If it's something you're going to store away for the future, you want to make sure nothing happens to it so it doesn't decrease in value. So let's just say that we are selling cars and we made too many cars that we cannot sell in the first few months of the quarter. Well, we want to store those cars away, but we want to maintain their value, so we're going to hire somebody to secure them and to make sure that nobody steals them, damages them, or messes with them in any way. So we're going to have security around those things. We're going to have insurance on them in case there's a fire at the warehouse where we're storing them. That's going to cost us money. We also have to be careful about spoilage. If we're dealing with food product, there's a shelf life at which we can't sell that after a certain point. If we're dealing with cars, the longer those cars sit in a warehouse, the longer that it's going to be, or the less value that they're going to hold. Because once we get to the next year model, it's going to be hard for us to sell the ones that are sitting there in the warehouse at the price that we want to sell them for. So there's all these extra costs involved in having a surplus. You don't want that just sitting around. You want to find a way to get rid of your surplus and be able to get some return on your investment there. So there are a few solutions to surplus. So let me walk through a couple of them. First one you can do here is increase demand. You are going to try to shift the demand curve to the right. And I know you're thinking, well, you're a supplier. You don't have a whole lot to do with demand. You're right. So what we have to do is we have to find a way to encourage consumers to buy at higher prices. One of the ways that marketers often do this is by getting an endorsement by a celebrity. Well, because Steph Curry eats these candy bars, I need to eat one too. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a candy bar, even though it is above the price I'm normally willing to pay, just because Steph Curry eats those candy bars. And we could go on with lots of other examples, but we have ways to encourage consumers to buy at higher prices. It doesn't always work. In fact, a lot of times it doesn't work because most consumers are looking at the bottom line, they're looking at the prices. But that is a strategy. If it works and you can get people to go up and shift their demand, then you can get rid of your surplus. And that is one way to make that work. The other thing you can do is a price floor. Now, price floor is where you are going to create a minimum price at which that item can be sold. So for example, if I want to sell these at $1.25, these candy bars, $1.25, and I were to get the government to create a price floor for all candy bars at $1.25. Therefore, we are going to increase demand because they cannot find candy bars for cheaper than $1.25. And so because I make a good quality product, they're going to come to me and they're going to buy them from me, knowing that they cannot get them anywhere else. This is pretty rare and is not usually going to happen and generally requires government involvement. So it's pretty rare that that's going to be a solution for you. You could also choose to decrease supply. Now, this also has its pros and cons. Of course, decreasing supply, shifting your supply curve to the left, is going to reduce your surplus. And you're going to get to a new equilibrium point at $1.25. So we look at our candy bar graph there on the screen, and we can see that at $1.25, I am willing to make, the demand curve is at $2,250. So at that price, in order to reduce my surplus, I'm going to only make $2,250. Therefore, I have no surplus left. Now, I would love to make more than that. Okay, if it were up to me, I would be making, what was it, $4,750, but that creates such a surplus. So I'm going to cut back my production. Well, that's going to do a lot of things. It's going to lay off employees. It's going to send a message to my customers. It's going to send a message to my competitors. And that's a pretty risky thing to all of a sudden decrease my supply. And if there's a good competitor out there, like let's say Willy Wonka, and he is making good chocolate at lower prices, I'm going to have a hard time staying in business. So decreasing supply is risky, but it is a solution. The third and best solution is to allow the market to work. So I'm going to gradually reduce my price from that $1.25 that I wanted to sell all those candy bars down little by little until I meet the equilibrium point. It's going to take time. It generally is trial and error. But once we can get to the point where I sell my excess surplus, then I have met that equilibrium point and I no longer have those leftover goods or services. And so this is generally your best option. Just allow the market to work, and the market price here is my incentive. And once I find out that market price, now I can determine in this particular example, at 70 cents per candy bar, I can make $3,500. If I'm still willing to do that, then I'm going to continue my business that way. If I look at it and I say, that is not enough, I may just get out of it while I am still ahead. And that's what good entrepreneurs have to decide. Now, this can also go the other way. If we are looking at it from the opposite perspective, we are going to look at a shortage where I am going to have my price below market equilibrium. When prices are below the value that consumers have on those items, there often results in a shortage. So a shortage is where consumers are willing to buy more at lower prices, and therefore there's not enough product to go around. So we look at the demand curve, and if I am going to lower my price down to 50 cents per candy bar, I have 6,000 people lining up outside my candy shop wanting to buy candy bars on that day. But I am only willing to make 1,000 candy bars at that 50-cent price. So I'm going to have a very limited quantity at that low, low price. And so I'm going to be left with a shortage of 5,000 candy bars, or 5,000 angry customers sitting outside my door hoping that they can get a candy bar when, in fact, I didn't make enough. And that can obviously cause some problems. We see that Black Friday is, to me, one of the best examples of this, where companies intentionally only put a certain number of items on their store shelves, creating an intentional shortage and making it competitive there, where you get customers lined up at the doors and they want to buy all your items, and if they don't get the one they want, then oftentimes they're upset, or maybe they'll go find something else that is a substitute. Maybe it's a little bit more higher priced, but they're still willing to buy. One of the other things that we can do here with a shortage is we can incorporate a price ceiling to help deal with that. And so price ceiling is going to create a maximum price that can be set for that item. And again, this is going to be government controlled, and so no prices will be allowed to rise up to market equilibrium point in a price ceiling. They're going to intentionally create a shortage, and if we were to use this candy bar example with a price ceiling, then we would set that, let's say, at 50 cents. So there would always be a shortage. There'd always be high demand for candy bars, which means that there will always be candy bar companies in business. And that's one way the government may set that in place. Now, chances are not going to do that with candy bars, but they have done this with housing. The government project housing does set an intentional shortage to create livable opportunities for people, and artificially lowering the price by setting a price ceiling on how much people can charge for rent in certain government project areas. It provides jobs for people, it provides housing, and there's always people lined up trying to get these houses. Some solutions here to a shortage. Well, you can discourage demand, and I'm not sure how well this would go over in a marketing meeting if you walked in and told your boss, hey, we've got a shortage, so let's just encourage people to buy another product. Let's not have them buy ours. Certainly not going to go over well for most people. You can discourage demand by shifting the demand curve to the left. You're going to do some campaigns to try to encourage people to buy somebody else's product or to buy less of yours. Most companies don't operate this way. The only one that I can think of that would be an example of this would be an energy company. They're going to discourage demand for their product to help conserve energy. They're always going to have people demanding their product, and so they're not really worried about losing customers, but they want you to conserve by turning your lights off, by not keeping your electronics plugged in, and that type of thing. So might be the only example I can think of there. You could increase your supply. And so you look at the price drop, or the price at 50 cents, and you had a shortage. Well, maybe you're going to increase your supply and you would now meet the demand at the lower price. That's an option. You've got to look at all of your avenues there and figure out if that's a possibility. One thing you can do to accomplish that is increase your technology or productivity. Maybe buy a new machine that is going to help make your company work more efficiently. Maybe it's going to help you churn out more candy bars more quickly. Maybe you're going to bring in more productive workers. Lots of different things that you can do to increase your supply without making your production costs go extremely high. A lot of companies may look at this as an option. But the third and the best way here is to allow the market to work. When you've got a shortage, best thing you can do is begin increasing your price slowly and incrementally until you reach that equilibrium point. Just like the best solution to a surplus is to allow the market to work by lowering your price, if you raise your price slowly, then you will eventually get to that equilibrium point where you will find that you make the same number as people are willing to buy, and you find a good price there in the middle. Now, there is a video here. I will attach that video on the idea of supply in the Indiana Jones movie, and so you're welcome to watch that. It'll probably be posted right below this one in the Canvas page, and so I encourage you to watch that. He explains through a number of these topics using a number of visuals as well. It may help your understanding of how this all works together.